So I'm Seth with According to Seth. How are you doing today?
Doing good, man.
I got a chance to check out the movie last night and I absolutely loved it. So I'm excited to get to talk to you a little bit about it.
Thank you for being a supporter, man. It truly means a lot to me.
Of course. So one of the first things I wanted to ask you, because obviously you filmed on the road, you did like a whole, tour across the United States. What was the biggest challenge you faced doing that?
Um, what's the best way to answer that?
Yeah.
So there were a few things that happened that honestly, sh- uh, well, we were robbed in Vallejo.
Oh wow.
Um, we were approached by two instances of people on drugs um, that made the evening quite difficult. But I think the biggest thing is just coordinating, five cars in a caravan, moving across the country simultaneously whilst trying to honor a story and be open to the fact that even though we did a scout trip, being open to seeing something along the way and being like, no, 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 let's stop here. Um, those types of challenges were probably the most prominent. It's just it sucks being in a car for that long, and
Hmm.
then like from an actor's perspective, and I was one of the drivers as well, but from a director's perspective is also it's like, hey, we're gonna drive for 6 hours, and then we're gonna get out, and we're also gonna work for 6 hours. I can't imagine for me driving is a chance for me to think. I do a
Hmm.
lot of thinking while I'm driving. So knowing like, hey, we're going to be, when we get to this destination, we're going to be doing these two scenes. I found it helpful to have 6 hours to think about how I'm going to do this next scene. Um, but for the actors, I can't imagine like it's got to be tough. Like you're in a vehicle, you're not in your own space, you're not
Hmm.
able to like really get inside of the emotion of the character. Or maybe it's just the exact opposite. Like you maybe the car ride is annoying, or maybe it's hot or whatever, and you're immediately supposed to get out and be happy-go-lucky
Hmm.
because that's what scene we're doing. I can't imagine that would be very easy at all. So, kudos to the actors and kudos to everybody on the crew for doing the exact same thing. Like, hey, we're going to drive for 6 hours and then we're going to get out and we're going to set up lights and cameras and all this other stuff. And then we're going to film and then we're going to get back in the car and we're going to do it again. So to everybody, that was a part of it, I think just that simple addition to the daily grind of being a filmmaker, was pretty difficult.
That's awesome. And I know you kind of brought up that you had a lot of time to think you were in the car. And I mean, it's such a daunting task filming 21 days, 13 states. So was there something that you learned about yourself that you can take on for future directorial roles?
Um, Trust yourself. Um, do not be afraid to ask for help. And I said this previously, but learning how to communicate to each of the actors individually
Hmm.
rather than thinking that your way is the right way. Yeah, learning how to communicate better and sooner. Like having the time, like that was a revelation that I had on week three, unfortunately. And I remember having this moment where I was just like I wasn't getting necessarily what I wanted to see. Everybody was on edge because we had traveled all through the night and we're shooting in the nighttime. Um, and because we were all on edge and because I was lacking, sleep and the ability to, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Um, because I was lacking the ability to see clearly, I guess is the best
Hmm.
way. Um, it was tough to communicate the right way. And it wasn't until that aha moment and then everything after that, I was just like, I'm so sorry, guys. Like, you're this type of person and you want to be communicated with this way. You're this type of person and you want to be communicated this way. And you're this type of person. So it was just one of those like light bulb moment, like, oh, I'm talking as if I'm talking to the same person because in my brain I'm going, actor. That's the only thing. It's like, hey, I'm talking to an actor, let me communicate, but that's not even remotely, not even remotely accurate nor helpful. And so it literally took me having just a pivotal moment of like, aha, Chaysen, it's your fault. Like you're the leader of this ship. You should learn how to communicate better, so that your point can be felt, and you get, the best out of everybody that's working with you. But I would say that's probably the biggest thing.
That's awesome. And speaking of getting the best out of everybody, I noticed like having this person like Maeve come in and being, through something similar, I felt like the movie kind of completely shifted and she was like this anchor or something that TJ needed. And she brought out the best in him. So how did you know during the audition that they were perfect for each other and they had such great chemistry, I thought.
Well, here's a weird situation. So first and foremost, any of the casting stuff, um, I must tip my hat to Susan Shopmaker who did the casting, and she made any of the final choices very, very easy. Actually, no, that's not true. Pretty difficult because all of her choices were really good.
Hmm.
So when we got to the top two or three people, it was kind of like a collective, me, Bill, Susan, making the final decisions, and we're like, yeah, this is the person. But she actually has a twin.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and they're both actors and they're both great, and they both did amazing auditions. Um, and I remember thinking like, oh man, like how do we choose here? They look the same,
Hmm.
because they're identical, and their acting styles were just ever so slightly different. And Catherine, there was just something, how do I say this? Because her and her sister were very, very, both very honest on screen. Um, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, the way it panned out was just like one of them chose to have to exam or give an example of a softer side,
Hmm.
um, which I'm sure her sister is completely capable of doing. It just happened to be like, hey, this is the audition you sent in, and this is the way that we're going to go. But Catherine is very genuine and very likable on screen. But I'd also like to bring up the fact that we shot this chronologically. So when you get the reason you feel that way is kind of a testament because William Chris Sumter is freaking amazing.
Hmm.
Uh, and he did his job perfectly. So much so that when you get to Maeve, you're like, oh, it's kind of a breath of fresh air. Like his character is meant to be, or Chris's character is meant to be overbearing. It's meant to be that
Hmm.
friend that's like got everything going. He's got parents that give him, money and a car, and he's, borderline entitled, and very bossy. And he's like, move over, you can't drive. Like everybody's always making these choices for Finn. And when we get to Catherine, he's kind of had that turn, in his character where he wants to start making decisions. Um, but yeah, getting to Catherine and feeling kind of this breath of fresh air is both by design in the script from Bill, but also in the nature of the filming process because we're on the back leg of the filming. She just flew into Texas. Excuse me. She just flew into Texas, and it's a whole different dynamic to have, two male friends, bickering and arguing and being, young boys on the road versus like a guy look, TJ's character looking across the car and being like,
Hmm.
she's kind of cute, but also having this honesty and innocence about him where it's like, I don't think I'm interested in her as like, in that way. We just became friends. We were passerbyers in the night, and the honesty of that and the, respect that you can see between them as
Hmm.
characters lends itself to the ending that we, put on screen. And I'm not going to talk about the ending because I don't want to give it away, but it lends itself to the ending of the film.
So, without getting to spoilers and talking a little bit about that, because I know you kind of already brought up, James being an integral part of it. Was there ever part of the story? Because, sometimes our family can be our friends, and it's like we don't realize what we have until they're gone. So,
Yeah.
was there ever a moment in like the script or the story that you like saw him continuing on until the end with him?
Um, Say that one more time. Is there
Like, was there ever any part in the script that had Ross James continuing on driving the rest of the way until he goes to meet his father, like continuing the journey with him?
well, Ross does play the father.
Or sorry, not Ross.
Chris?
I'm yes, I'm kidding. I'm confused. Sorry
Oh,
about that.
okay.
Yes.
So William Chris Sumter, for those watching, plays Jake, the best friend of TJ. And so your question is, was there ever a version of the script where the friend kept going with him? And
Yes.
the answer is no.
Okay.
Because as a device to show TJ's growth, there Bill was very, very, um, pointed in his
Hmm.
ability to say, like, look, making choices cost us stuff sometimes. And when we're at that point in the diner and TJ makes that choice, what does it do? It cost him something.
Hmm.
Not necessarily forever, because you see how that
Yep.
moment plays out. Um, but definitely a growing point. Like, and we've all got those friends that push us or try us or test us. And to be perfectly honest, as a testament to somebody who has, I've got five, really great friends that I've had for 20 plus years. You need those moments. You need to be
You do.
tested. You need the ability to stand up for yourself and go, no, screw you. Like, I'm doing what I want, and you're gonna have to like this, uh, because you're my friend. And I think that's what Chris beautifully portrayed on camera. He played that part beautiful. Um,
Definitely.
Walked the line enough to where you're like you love him and are just like stop being so pushy.
Hmm.
But also you see his side of things. Like in that argument, you 100% see his side of things. And I think that's a testament to Bill's writing in that scene with when they start talking about their fathers. Like that is both of those sides are unbelievably true. So
Yep.
I think that's more of a testament to Bill in that particular moment. And I hope I answered your question.
You did. No, that was perfect. First of all, I love the Goonies poster in the background, and one of the things that I
Yeah.
I noticed in the movie is there was a ton of horror Easter eggs. Like there was a Texas Chainsaw comment. You had the American Werewolf in London poster in his room, which I
Yeah.
love all of that. So, are you a big fan of horror, and is that something that you would like to do, like try your hand at next directing?
So I'll give you two more Easter eggs that are in there. Because The Goonies is my favorite movie.
Hmm.
Um, if you notice the beach that he gets to,
Hmm.
there's one shot that sets it up. It's not the same beach because we just didn't have the time to get there. But there's one shot that is very reminiscent of the final beach shot in the Goonies when the ship is being seen on the horizon. And then there's also the shot where the boys are in the attic in the Goonies where all four of them are looking over the poster. And then the campfire scene with Maeve, that was my inspiration for that
Oh,
that
that's
scene.
cool.
Like when she drops it and she's just like, this really is a big country. Like during that moment, like you can see the top of her eyes, she's reading a book of poetry. And that was my little Easter egg to the Goonies because it's my favorite film of all time. But to get to your question, my next film that I am going to be going up on in January is a psychological thriller about a serial killer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that one is underway. We are in the final revisions of the script, and then we start the casting process next month, and we will likely be in pre-production in January.
Excited to check it out. Horror is my favorite genre, so that sounds definitely intriguing.
Well, whenever let's do this again, whenever we're done with this next one.
Definitely. One of the other couple questions I had for you is, we all have that first car that we wanted growing up. The car is iconic and it's a huge part of this film because it's his first car. So we all have that first car that we wanted. For me, it was Eleanor from Gone in 60 Seconds. Did you ever
Nice.
have a car that you wanted to be your first car?
I my first car, so I have a funny story about my first car. My first car was a 1988 BMW 325 IS. And I bought in tandem with my parents. We bought the car for $3,000. And I've always loved BMWs. And that version, the 1988, it was bright red. cherry red, just iconic old school BMW. It was kind of my dream car. Ever since then, I've had a passion to own a BMW M3. Um,
Nice.
just because of that situation. But I think I was pretty fortunate as far as cars go. However, there are some older classics like, in the 19 late 40s and 50s, like a Buick Slopeback or something like
Hmm.
that. I would genuinely look forward to getting to a place where I have the time and the resources to rebuild a classic car or an antique at this point, um, rebuild one of those classic, big body, steel
That's
frame
awesome.
Buick backs. That would be my passion, I think, in regards
Yeah,
to cars.
that's awesome. I know the Eleanor, or I always wanted a Camaro SS, and then I ended up getting a Hyundai Sonata, sharing it with my brother. So very
Yep.
different.
I had my mom's minivan first
Yep.
before, and I had to share that with my mom. So you're not very cool whenever you're sharing your mom's minivan.
No. One of my favorite sequences in this movie was the thunderstorm when he was just sitting in the back, looking into the sky. So how long did it take to get that shot of the lightning?
Okay, so if you recall, and then this is the beauty of editing,
Hmm.
if you recall the campfire scene with Jake and TJ when he's like, Texas Hold'em, are we going to make it? That conversation. In the background, if you can see it, there is a heat lightning. We were in Arkansas,
Hmm.
uh, by a huge river, which you can't even see the river, but I mean, it was a massive river. Does the Mississippi River run through Arkansas?
I believe so, yes.
Then it
I
might
think
have
so.
been the Mississippi River. It's evading me where exactly, geographically we were, but um, nonetheless, that time of year there was a huge heat, warm front coming through, and so
Hmm.
it caused heat lightning off in the background, and it was beautiful. And we just chose to roll on it. Like after we ended the scene, we just pointed the camera towards the clouds and rolled on it. And I was like, I don't know when I'm going to use this, and I don't know how. But I'm going to use it because one of the other things I really wanted to capture was like you've seen it in many of the films, and if you've ever traveled across country, you've seen it yourself. When you're driving through the plains, like the open when it's super flat, you look off in the distance and there's like this big, huge rolling storm cell coming in, and it's like both beautiful and terrifying at the same time
Hmm.
because of how far away it is. Um, that's what I wanted to do, and we never got that. And because we couldn't stop, we outside of that one moment with that thunderstorm, it never even rained.
Oh, wow.
Like it sprinkled a little bit, not while we were, on the road, but it sprinkled a little bit up in upstate New York, and that's it. Like it was bright and sunny the whole freaking way there. So, um, I stole that moment. And then when we got his like moment of the night of the souls, when he's being self-reflective, you know, he looks up to the sky, and then we turn to the sky, and then the world kind of comes in around him, and then everything drops out, and then
Yep.
the bug sequence happens, which that is real. Finn in real life hates bugs, like hates bugs. So that was worked in because of his personal beliefs and
Yeah,
his character, not in the script. Like him not liking bugs was not in the script. It's just because he like doesn't like bugs.
that's perfect. And I'm sure he ran into quite a few with the top down.
That he did, yeah.
So, last question I had here for you. I think movies are like the perfect way to bridge the gap and, connect people. I use movies as a way to connect with others all the time. And everybody always has that one movie that they recommend to somebody to kind of help them get to know you as a person better. So, what would that movie be for you?
If I'm being
Yeah.
honest, like the Goonies, it's adventurous. It's the little guy wins. It's got treasure hunting and pirates and adventure and booby traps and mazes and I mean everything. Outside of that film, though, one of my all-time favorites is Barton Fink by the Coen brothers.
Oh, wow. I haven't seen that one.
If you haven't, watch it. John
Okay.
Turturro, John Goodman. It is a phenomenal film. And the reason I would say to watch it for anybody isn't necessarily on the basis of the film, it's how the film came to be.
Hmm.
It was strictly out of necessity. The Coen brothers, it is a movie about writer's block. a New York-based playwright, moves to Los Angeles to, be a part of the big, Hollywood movement and
Hmm.
write movies for the big picture. Um, and he gets there and he gets writer's block. But the Coen brothers, when they wrote the film, it was very similar to their situation. They were hired to write a movie and they got there and they got horrible writer's block. And in order to get themselves out of writer's block, they wrote Barton Fink, a movie about writer's block. And that to me is a testament. Like, I love that film. That film was actually shown to me by a good friend and colleague, Zebulon Griffin, who's a cinephile as well. And ever since I've watched that, it's been in my top five films of all time because of not just the film. The film is freaking amazing if you know anything about the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
Um, but how the movie came to be and why the movie exists because they were fixing and or creating their own answer to a problem. Hey, we've got writer's block. Okay, well, let's write about writer's block. And that is me in a nutshell. It's like when you're faced with the problem, there is always a way out. It
Hmm.
might not be exactly what you're looking for, but there might be something beautiful on the other side of just choosing to pick a direction and go with it. Um, and in the previous interview, uh, I spoke on like perfection. Something I learned as a director along this way is like trying to be perfect is going to kill you. Like perfection is the killer of all progress. So at certain points, you have to just make a strong decision even if you're faced with multiple decisions to or multiple choices, you have to pick one and you have to be um, very strong-minded on making that situation unfold. Because if you don't, you'll lose yourself. You'll lose any, it's easy to say like, hey, like we got robbed in Vallejo,
Hmm.
which changed the whole ending of the movie. We were supposed to film in Vallejo. We ended up filming in LA. Changed the entire ending of the movie. And I stand by the ending of the movie all day because I'm like, nope, this film was exactly what it needed to be. And I'm grateful. And you just can't live in the past, you know?
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait for people to check it out. Where can people find it? And is there anything you'd like people to know before you end here?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon, and we'll send you a link if you wanted to
Perfect.
and then
Yes.
eventually, in the near future, it'll be streaming, and as soon as that information drops, we'll feed that information to you as well, so you can tag that with the podcast,
Perfect.
and yeah, if you've got an idea, don't try to be perfect, just have a solid plan and go do it. That's the only real advice. Like try to make a plan. It's gonna
Yep.
change. But just act. Like make a plan, act on it. Don't keep trying to change it. Don't keep trying to make it better. Have a plan and act on it and move on. Like once you're done with something, move on to the next thing, learn your lessons and put band-aids on the scrapes and bruises along the way.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the time today. Enjoy the rest of your day.